Mom, that's our father, not just a random person, the girl stated, and a shiver ran down the woman's spine as she looked at the homeless man's countenance. The square throbbed with activity, a hive of people scurrying about their day. Amidst this throng, at the subway entrance, Artem sat perched on a worn piece of cardboard. His plastic cup, occasionally receiving coins, was a meager testament to his existence. A year prior, he was a celebrated architect, his name whispered in the city's elite circles. Now he was unseen, his face obscured by a beard, his eyes mirroring a deep sorrow and despair, his attire reduced to tattered remnants. A hush fell over the crowd that had been encircling them. Artem lifted his gaze from the ground and saw a woman strolling with a boy by her hand. A pang of sorrow shot through him, as if his heart had been gripped tightly. He knew them instantly. It was Elena and Kostya. Their discussion was animated. Kostya, nearing adulthood, carried a hefty bag overflowing with new clothes. Artem observed with a heavy heart as they transformed. Elena remained as graceful as always, yet a wistful sadness lingered in her eyes. Kostya, his son, had grown taller and more robust, but the smile that mirrored Artem's own had dulled. Artem yearned to approach them, but his body remained immobile, refusing his command. He lowered his head, seeking refuge in the shadows, wishing to become unseen. He desperately wished to avoid appearing before them in this state, soiled, ragged, and humiliated. It was too late. Kostya, walking past, abruptly halted, his eyes landing on Artem. He murmured something to his mother, his voice low and urgent. Elena, her face etched with worry, reached for her son's hand, but he pulled away and walked towards Artem, who felt a surge of panic rise in his chest. He squeezed his eyes shut, desperate for it all to vanish like a nightmare. "Mom, that's our father, not someone without a home," Kostya exclaimed, his voice laced with both shock and sorrow. A wave of shuddering fear washed over Elena as she gazed upon the homeless man's face. She scrutinized him, her eyes searching his features desperately for a trace of familiarity, something that resonated with a deep, cherished memory. Her expression, which had been serene just moments before, twisted into one of horror. She instinctively covered her mouth, trying to suppress a scream, but her tear-filled eyes exposed the agonizing truth. It was him, her Artem. Yet he was a stranger, only a hollow shell, a mere echo. A faded reflection of the man she had once called her husband remained. "Artem," she murmured, and the name, uttered in her gentle tone, awakened a flicker of life within him. He lifted his gaze, and their eyes locked. He saw pain, fear, and a sympathy that pierced him most deeply, reflected in the depths of her eyes. The intensity of her look was overwhelming. He averted his gaze, trying to escape, to flee from her stare, from their love, from her compassionate tenderness. But Kostya tightened his grip on his hand. "Dad, where are you headed? It's us," Kostya asked, his voice laced with worry. Artem pulled his hand back, struggling to escape. "Let me go," he breathed, his voice raspy and unfamiliar, a fact that startled him. "I'm not your father, leave me alone." However, Kostya refused to release Artem's hand. His grip was fierce, as if he worried that if he loosened his hold, Artem would simply cease to exist, vanishing without a trace. Elena, regaining her composure, walked towards them, turning a blind eye to the surrounding grime, the despair, and his own wretched condition. She knelt before Artyom. "Artyom, what happened? Why? Why didn't you let us know? We believed something had befallen you, that you had simply departed." Her voice shook, tears tracing wet paths down her pallid cheeks. I didn't want you to find me in this state. I have nothing of value to offer you. Just leave," he uttered, his words piercing him like shards of ice. He yearned to embrace them, to declare his affection, yet he was unable to. His heart was heavy with the belief that he was undeserving of their love and regard. Overcome with sympathy for his father's pain, Kostya too began to cry. "Dad, we love you. We'll always be by your side. Let's return home. Please, come with us." Overwhelmed, Artem's strength deserted him. He embraced his son, holding him tight, inhaling the comforting scent that was so familiar. Bitter, salty tears flowed down his cheeks as he buried his face in Kostya's shoulder, their sobs merging into a heartbreaking symphony. Elena held them both, speechless, her own tears a testament to their shared pain. A year's worth of experiences, anguish, and suffering erupted in that single, agonizing moment. Amidst the bustling square, their sorrow and love intertwined, forging a bond of unity between the three. Back home, Artem grappled with the events that had unfolded, trying to understand how everything had culminated in this point. Past images and memories surged through his mind. Their home, shared with Elena, was a spacious and luminous haven, seemingly crafted for a magazine spread, its interior exuding success. Artem, the family's patriarch and a celebrated architect, led his own thriving firm, Eidos, and each of his projects became a defining feature in the architectural world. His work encompassed a range of projects, from residential complexes to imposing skyscrapers. Elena, his wife and a past prima ballerina, prioritized family over her performing career. Her elegance and discerning taste were reflected in every aspect of their home. Their 14-year-old son, Kostya, possessed both his father's intellectual prowess and his mother's artistic flair. He held a deep fascination for physics, art, and modern dance. Their lives were radiant with light and happiness. Family breakfasts, seaside outings, and intimate evenings by the hearth formed the bedrock of their joyful existence. However, this peaceful period was fleeting. The work that had once motivated Artem started to take its toll, wearing him down over time. Unrealistic deadlines, ever-expanding projects, and relentless pressure weighed heavily on him. Artem came home with decreasing frequency, arriving so drained that he could barely muster the energy to sleep. Elena sensed a widening chasm between them. In the hushed stillness of the house, punctuated only by the soft rustling of turning pages, Elena walked towards Artem. Each of her steps held a weight of unspoken sorrow, as delicate as a gentle breeze. A steaming cup of tea materialized on the table, and she delicately added a sprig of mint. Artem, engrossed in his calculations, scribbled along the edges of the drawing, remained oblivious to her arrival. "Artem," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper, yet carrying a resolute undertone. "We don't get to see each other often. Kostya is curious about why you're no longer interested in flying drones with him at the park. He expresses that your absence makes the experience feel incomplete for him." Without lifting his gaze from his papers, Artem responded, his voice raspy and drained. "Lena, I'm doing this for both of us, for the life we'll build together. This project is going to be monumental. It's going to propel us forward, offering you the chance to establish your own studio and enabling Kostya to attend the most renowned university globally. What if you were to leave us? What if you abandoned our family?" Her words cut him deeply, leaving a chilling emptiness and a searing pain in their wake. They lingered in the silence, a heavy burden on his heart. Artem let out a heavy sigh, the weight of his words and weariness pressing down on him. Gazing at Elena, he saw not judgment in her eyes, only a palpable fear of losing him, their comfortable life together. This fear mirrored his own, a haunting echo within his soul, though he couldn't bring himself to acknowledge it. He held her close, but the comfort and safety of his embrace felt less potent than it once had. Held in his arms, he felt a profound sense of distance, as if he were encircling not a real woman, but a phantom of his past emotions. His latest ambitious undertaking, Heavenly Harbor, was destined to be his crowning achievement, a masterpiece that would immortalize his name in architectural history. This elite residential complex, unparalleled in its scope and grandeur, demanded substantial financial resources and a vast network of influential contacts. This is why he sought out Sergei. Artyom instinctively pulled away from the man. There was a menacing and unsettling quality to his appearance and demeanor. While Sergei was undeniably a brilliant businessman, adept at accumulating wealth, his cold stare and ruthless, inflexible nature repelled Artyom. Despite this, the terms Sergei proposed were too alluring to refuse. He offered not only financial assistance, but also aid in navigating the often insurmountable bureaucratic hurdles that frequently blocked Artyom's path. The beginning was flawless, unfolding as if orchestrated. Construction was progressing rapidly, substantial funds were flowing into the accounts, and Artem reveled in the success. Feeling at the zenith of his career, he exuded confidence in himself, his talent, his brilliance. Yet Sergei slowly infiltrated his life like poison ivy, subtly yet persistently growing stronger. Initially, their interactions were simply casual evening phone calls, but he gradually started dictating his advice, which evolved into increasingly authoritative commands. Then, during a meeting, Sergei abruptly redirected the conversation to the topic of selecting a building materials supplier. He rejected Artem's proudly displayed drawing, adopting a defensive posture with his arms crossed. "We'll be collaborating with Aurora," he stated, his tone as unforgiving as the frigid winter wind. "However, Vector offers superior materials at a more appealing price point," Artem retorted, carefully masking his anger. Nevertheless, his insides were churning with fury. Sergei's lips curled into a sly, almost serpentine smirk. "Artem, as an architect, your talent lies in crafting beautiful designs. I handle the financial aspects. We'll proceed as I've outlined. Do you have any concerns about this approach?" His voice held no room for question. It was a command without exception. Fear constricted Artem's throat. In that instant, the terrifying truth became undeniable. He was trapped, a pawn in this man's game. From then on, Artem's life spiraled into an abyss. He relinquished control of his fate, reduced to a mere instrument in the hands of others. He lived each day in a state of anxious waiting for Sergei's call, which could arrive unexpectedly, regardless of the hour. Threats loomed over their partnership, a constant shadow. Any hint of defiance, and Sergei would remind Artyom of his family, his comfortable existence, and his standing, all of which could be shattered with effortless cruelty. Desperate to break free from this predicament, Artyom sought out compromising information on Sergei, but his endeavors proved futile. He adopted the moniker the Shadow Man and exhibited extreme caution in all his actions. On a damp autumn evening, as silence enveloped Artem as he neared the completion of his project, a phone call jolted him awake. His secretary's voice, shaking with fear, answered his call. "Artem Alexievich, your office is on fire," he shouted urgently into the phone. Without a moment's pause, Artem raced towards the inferno. The vibrant flames erupting from his office windows pierced him with agonizing pain. His entire life's work, years of toil, all his drawings, contracts, documents, everything he had meticulously built, was consumed by the blaze. He was certain this was Sergei's handiwork, a desperate attempt to conceal his shady dealings and erase his past. The following morning, with the remnants of yesterday's fire smoke lingering in the air, Artem encountered Sergei, certain he would uncover telltale signs in his actions that would compel a confession. Despite the situation, Sergei remained unperturbed, calmly sipping his coffee in his opulent office, as if the events had no impact on him. "Artem, I truly regret how things unfolded," he stated, enjoying his coffee, "but now you are indebted to me. A significant amount. Your contracts are now null and void while mine remain active. You orchestrated all of this. You were trying to hide your wrongdoings," Artem declared. Sergei merely smiled. "Do you possess any proof? If not, I suggest you locate the funds swiftly, or I will expose you, revealing that you orchestrated the fire to conceal your debts. I'll be sure to mention your bribes and the use of inferior materials." Artem sought assistance from the police, but they declined, stating insufficient evidence. Sergei's influence and reach were vast, spanning every corner. Artem, however, found himself in a desperate predicament. He lost it all. His business, his residence, his wealth. Everything vanished without a clue. The manner in which this occurred was beyond his comprehension. His meticulously crafted world, built with such passion and dedication, crumbled in a single night. He arrived home, his gait weighed down, as though burdened by the world's sorrows. Lena was there, awaiting him, the table set with festive cheer. His beloved lasagna took center stage. "Artem, something's wrong. Why are you looking so pale?" Her voice shook with worry. "I attempted to reach you by phone, but you didn't pick up. I became quite concerned." He gazed into her eyes, seeing love and hope reflected there, and he found himself unable to destroy her world. He couldn't bring himself to reveal that their idyllic life was crumbling, that he was financially ruined, a fugitive from the law, a man of no consequence. As dawn broke, he packed his meager possessions into a worn backpack, leaving a brief note on the table. "Gone on a long business trip. Don't look for me. I'll return." He ventured into the uncertain future. He foolishly believed that this escape would resolve everything, that he could mend things with Sergei and come back. But his optimism proved misplaced. Sergei was an inescapable shadow, ever present and unforgiving. He struggled to find work, his reputation was ruined, and his finances were frozen. Days bled into nights, and with each one, Artem's grip on himself loosened. His confidence, pride, and aspirations faded away, swallowed by the grime of city living. He joined the ranks of the countless homeless, becoming a shadow in the city's gray expanse. His clothes were tattered and stained, his beard and hair matted into tangled masses. Memories of his family brought only pain, so he pushed them away. His entire existence felt like a ghost, a faded memory of what had once been real, now only lingering to torment him relentlessly. He strolled along the streets, his gaze drawn to the glittering shop windows, the groups of people sharing laughter, and the grand buildings he himself had once conceived. Each creation he encountered brought a sharp, agonizing pang of sorrow. The ache of loss was overwhelming, the stark realization that he no longer belonged to this world. He felt like a ghost, drifting through the city where he had once held power. In a deserted park, sitting on a bench, he spotted a familiar figure. It was Kostya, his son, strolling with companions, his laughter echoing through the air as he held a gleaming new drone. Artem yearned to approach him, to offer comfort in a hug, but hesitated. Gazing at his son, clad in tattered clothes, smeared with dirt, he saw only a mirror reflecting his own failure. What words could he possibly offer his son? That his father was a man who had squandered everything? He averted his gaze, suppressing the urge to cry. Deep down, he knew there was no return. His vision of a perfect life was gone, and before him stretched only emptiness and the inescapable abyss of oblivion. A heavy, leaden-gray sky blanketed the city, releasing a fine drizzle that fell relentlessly. Artem found shelter against the cold wall of a dilapidated building, perched on a piece of cardboard. His soaked clothes adhered to him, intensifying the ever-present chill, a discomfort that no amount of clothing, not even the thick layer of refuse he used as a blanket, could alleviate. Crouching down, he attempted to shield himself from the biting wind that pierced through him, clutching a meager scrap of dry bread he had discovered in a trash can earlier that day. Hunger was a relentless presence, a gnawing ache that was far more intense than the ordinary, easily quelled hunger he recalled from his past. A persistent, gnawing ache consumed him, twisting his stomach and draining his already dwindling strength. Each day became a struggle, a fight for sustenance, for any morsel, any scrap of half-eaten bread. He memorized the garbage collection schedule, knowing which bins held edible scraps and which were filled only with refuse. He consumed things he'd never before considered: moldy vegetables, the leftover remnants of other people's fast food meals, found in discarded cardboard boxes. Each mouthful of the food brought a wave of shame and disgust for his circumstances, a feeling intensified by the biting cold. The cold was particularly cruel at night, especially as autumn surrendered to the harsh grip of winter, turning each evening into a grueling struggle. Artem, along with other homeless individuals, found refuge in warm tunnels, beneath bridges, and within building entrances. Yet danger lurked around every corner. The desperation of those who had lost everything fueled a fierce determination to secure even the smallest sliver of space or a worn-out jacket. One night, as Artem slept, a massive, burly man approached him. Silently, he snatched a piece of cardboard from beneath Artem's head, a precious item he had diligently saved as his sole defense against the biting concrete. Artem struggled to defend himself, but he was outmatched by the man's strength. He endured repeated beatings, resulting in bruises on his face and the loss of his most prized possession. Street life was a relentless battle, a perpetual source of anxiety. Artem felt vulnerable from every angle, threatened by both people and the city itself. The police that drove him from his resting spots, stray dogs that snarled when he sought food, and uncaring passers-by who recoiled in disgust at his filthy, tattered appearance, All of these things fostered an aura of danger and isolation around him. He melted into the throng, becoming unseen, a shadow, a nondescript element of the urban scene. No one observed him, no one met his eyes. This apathy wounded him more profoundly than any physical assault. It utterly consumed him, leaving him a shell of his former self, obliterating his individuality. His most agonizing moments were those when he succumbed to temptation and found himself back at his old home. He understood it was a mistake, that it only intensified his pain, yet an unseen force compelled him there. He knew Elena's schedule, predicting her return from school and the grocery store, as if he had become a specter haunting his own existence. The day shone with an almost unnatural clarity, as if highlighting the starkness of Artem's joyless state. Huddled in the shadow of a sprawling maple, pressed against the corner of a large brick house, Artem observed. His heart pounded within him. A frantic bird trapped in its cage. Elena emerged from the house, her elegant coat and perfectly coiffed hair a stark contrast to his own disarray. As usual, her appearance was captivating. She entered their car, the same one he had presented to her, as an anniversary present, and drove off. Artem knew her destination, to collect Kostya from school. He chose to pursue her, walking quickly to ensure he didn't lose her from view. His feet, encased in worn, dilapidated shoes that were thoroughly soaked, felt neither the chill nor the ache. Instead, an overwhelming longing for his former life, a pain both intense and inescapable, consumed him. Upon reaching the school, he sought refuge behind a thicket of bushes, observing Elena as she emerged from the car and waited for her son. Kostya emerged, transformed into a young man. His shoulders were wider, his stature taller. He strolled along, engaged in light-hearted conversation with his companion, and Artem, gazing at his beaming face and genuine smile, found himself unable to suppress his tears. Kostya was a mirror image of himself, and this striking similarity brought him agonizing pain. Artem observed as Kostya and Elena embraced, her hand gently caressing his hair as they drove away in their vehicle. In that instant, Artem felt a profound sense of desolation, as if he were the most miserable person alive. Though mere meters separated him from his son, a vast chasm yawned between them. That night he silently approached the house, certain everyone was slumbering. He cautiously crept up to the window and peered inside. A nightlight illuminated the room, revealing photographs on the living room table. Among them he spotted one featuring himself, Elena, and Kostya, a final snapshot of them together, captured before his departure. In the gloom, he reflected on his past life, on his past joys, envisioning Elena and Kostya slumbering peacefully in their beds, while he, isolated and alone, stood shivering in the cold on the street. He longed for it all to be a cruel jest, that he'd wake and find it had been nothing but a nightmare. However, the harsh reality was that this was his truth. He remained there until dawn, until the sky was painted with the soft pinks of the rising sun. He observed the lights flicker on in the house, Kostya emerge onto the balcony, and Elena glance out the window. He swiftly averted his gaze, disappearing into the shadows, then made his escape. As he strolled down the street, a familiar tune caught his ear. It was the song he and Elena cherished, the one they always played during their evening rituals. The melody drifted from the open window of a passing luxury car. Artem stopped, his heart clenching with a wave of bittersweet longing. Images of them dancing to this very music in their comfortable living room, their laughter echoing, their bodies entwined, surged back to him. He experienced every nuance of their shared life, every aspect of their love, with a searing intensity. The idea of existing in a world that was once his, observing it operate without him, filled him with torment. Time accelerated relentlessly. A year had already passed since his departure. Kostya, his young son, had blossomed into a young man. Artem had caught glimpses of Kostya several times from afar, but never worked up the courage to speak to him. In Kostya's eyes, Artem detected a newfound gravity, a maturity that was tinged with sadness, a longing for a father he could never reclaim. Artem was consumed by guilt, believing himself to be the worst person on earth for leaving his family and causing them pain. As he glanced into a newsstand window, he saw a headline. "The Heavenly Harbor Project is complete. Opening ceremony." This sparked a wave of indecision within him. As he got closer, he saw a picture of Sergei standing beside the completed building. Sergei was grinning, scissors in hand, ready to cut the red ribbon, his expression full of expectant triumph. Beside him was Sergei's new collaborator, a renowned architect. A wave of anger washed over Artem. This man, who had once been his partner, had taken his project, his reputation, his future, and now he was enjoying the spoils of a victory that should have been Artem's. A shift occurred within him at that instant. Bitterness and despair dissolved, replaced by a frigid, all-encompassing rage. He understood he couldn't endure this existence any longer. He wouldn't let Sergei triumph. He wouldn't permit his reputation to be tarnished, nor would he allow his family to endure fear and uncertainty. He had to return and fight to reclaim everything that had been stolen from him. He was nothing more than a homeless, unkempt, and tattered man. How could he, a man of no consequence, dare challenge Sergei's authority? He lacked wealth, influence, and even the resources to improve his own appearance. Yet he possessed one invaluable asset: knowledge. He saw through the deceptions, understood Sergei's fraudulent actions and clandestine plans. He needed to find a way to reveal the truth to the public. A wave of determination washed over Artem. A resolute spark ignited in his eyes and his posture straightened, as if empowered by a newfound purpose. He was no longer adrift. He was a man with a defined objective, his mind teeming with plans. He realized his first priority was to restore his strength and locate a safe haven, one that wouldn't make him an easy target. He had to disappear, yet simultaneously be present everywhere. He embarked on a quest for information, retracing his steps to former workplaces and the site of his old office. He sought out anyone who might hold a clue, diligently piecing together fragments of his past to forge a new weapon. He understood this journey would be arduous and draining, but he was resolute in his determination to see it through. His honor, his name, and his family were at stake. He needed to demonstrate to himself and the world that he was not defeated. He had to return, for the well-being of Kostya, for the well-being of Elena, for his own good. Artyom's homecoming brought about a profound shift in his life. He felt displaced, an outsider in the familiar comfort of his own home. Shame washed over him, as if his presence tainted the sanctity of the space shared with Elena and Kostya. He sought refuge in his room, avoiding their gaze. Yet Elena and Kostya met his discomfort with unwavering patience, showering him with love and support, without judgment or prying questions, simply embracing him unconditionally. A slender beam of light pierced through a tiny gap in the heavy curtains, a silent reminder of time's ceaseless flow. Artyom lay on the bed, enveloped in a soft, warm blanket, his gaze fixed on the sliver of light. Everything surrounding him felt both familiar and strangely distant. These walls, the furniture, the scents, they were remnants of another life belonging to a person he had once been, but who was now absent from this world. Determined, he approached the wardrobe with the mirrored door and cautiously pulled back the curtains. His gaze fell upon his reflection, and he felt as though he were looking at a complete stranger. Hunger and hardship had taken their toll, leaving him with a gaunt appearance, a vacant stare, a long, unkempt beard, and messy hair, resembling a wild creature. He reached out to touch his face, his fingers, once powerful and solid, now thin and marred by calluses and sores. He shut his eyes, desperately attempting to banish the horrifying image from his mind. As evening descended, Elena entered his bedroom with a fresh set of clothes and a razor. Without uttering a sound, she meticulously arranged them on the table, before quietly exiting, closing the door softly behind her. He silently scrutinized the items that were once his, a profound sadness glimmering in his eyes. He shaved each stroke of the razor laden with weight, yet he carried out the ritual as if purging himself of something. Upon completion, he gazed into the mirror. He wasn't quite there yet, but he wasn't the same man he'd been seconds before. The reflection staring back at him in the mirror resembled Artem, yet a hidden sadness lingered in his eyes. He returned to the dinner table after a lengthy absence. Elena set a plate of steaming soup before him, and Kostya poured him a glass of water. Their actions were unremarkable. They ate as if it were any other evening. Yet he felt their underlying tension, recognizing their fear that he might depart once more. His hand shook with anticipation, barely managing to hold the spoon, and the soup nearly slipped from his grasp. "Dad, it's lasagna, you know, the one you love," Kostya murmured, keeping his eyes fixed on his task. Artem's gaze locked with Kostya's. The boy's resemblance to him was so striking that Artem felt a profound shift within himself. He lifted his spoon to his mouth and began to eat. But even though the meal was flavorful, it lacked savor. All he could sense was a wave of warmth, a warmth of love, care, and forgiveness that enveloped him completely. Following dinner, a tranquil ambiance enveloped them in the living room. The sole sound was the crackling of the fireplace. Artem recognized he had to speak with them, yet he struggled to find the right opening. His eyes landed on Elena, seated opposite him, her arms crossed on her lap, her gaze fixed on the flames. Her beauty was as striking as ever, but a profound, sincere sadness lingered in her eyes. I understand now that I was utterly foolish," he rasped. "I should have been honest with you. I should have stayed." Elena gazed up, her eyes devoid of blame or fury, only reflecting a profound sorrow. "Artem, why didn't you confide in us about your troubles? Why did you choose to handle everything alone?" Her voice was gentle, yet it carried an unshakable resolve. "Did you think we were incapable of assisting you? Did you assume we wouldn't try to connect with you? I didn't desire you to witness me in this state. I didn't wish for you to experience any sorrow. I was confident I could manage, that I could return. But then I simply lost my direction. I became insignificant," he confessed, each utterance a piercing blow. Kostya rose and walked towards him, laying a hand on his shoulder. "Father, you will always be our father, regardless of the circumstances. We won't leave you, ever," he declared, his voice resolute and unwavering. In that instant, Artem understood he wasn't solitary in his pursuit of the truth. He wasn't alone in this fight. He shared everything with them, about Sergei, his deceitful deeds, the fire, and the ongoing efforts to uncover incriminating evidence. He spoke at length, and Elena and Kostya remained silent, their attentiveness unbroken. In their gazes, he detected not disapproval, but empathy and trust. They believed his words. "Artem," Elena stated when he concluded, "you must fight. Resist his victory. Don't allow him to ruin all you've accomplished." "But how could this be? I'm utterly destitute. No wealth, no powerful connections, not even a reputation. He stripped me of everything," he exclaimed, his voice filled with desperation. Abruptly, Kostya, who had been quiet until that point, voiced his opinion. "Dad, we have you, and we possess intelligence, and I'm confident we can utilize it." A glimmer of hope ignited in Artem's eyes as he gazed at his son. "What do you mean by that?" "What I'm saying is that Sergei isn't flawless. He has his vulnerabilities, just as we all do, and I know how to use them," Kostya stated, his voice brimming with a certainty that impressed Artem. "Remember, Dad, how you said that in any system, any undertaking, there are tiny details that appear unimportant, but ultimately control everything?" "I recall," Artem stated, his heart pounding. "Every business transaction, every agreement, has subtle details that often go unnoticed. I have the ability to identify these nuances. I can uncover digital footprints and am prepared to assist you in doing so." Elena, seated beside him, squeezed Artem's hand. "We'll face this together," she affirmed. "Remember, Artem, you've never been alone. Time has simply obscured that truth from you." In that instant, Artem sensed a shift within his heart. The following weeks were a blissful blur for Artem. Having recently slept on cardboard, he now found himself comfortably seated at his desk, enveloped by the warmth of his home and the loving support of his family. They collaborated as a united front, Artem, as always, at the helm of their endeavors. The intricacies of the Heavenly Harbor project washed over him. Each sketch, every numerical figure, every contract signed with Sergei. He was convinced that within this complex web of financial dealings and falsified documents, remnants of their existence must remain. Elena assumed the position of analyst. Her brilliant intellect and remarkable memory assets in her own field, were now dedicated to uncovering everything about Sergei. She revisited past newspaper articles, delved into financial records, and scoured any available information about Heavenly Harbor and its creators. Elena sought to expose any inconsistencies, no matter how slight, in Sergei's seemingly unshakable facade. Kostya served as their conduit into the digital world, acting as their eyes and ears online. Being representative of his generation, he possessed a deep understanding of the internet. Leveraging his expertise, he diligently sought any information that might aid the case. He penetrated outdated email and social media accounts, combed through forums and the dark web for any reference to Sergei. Kostya's primary objective was to uncover what Artem referred to as a digital trail, any digital footprint capable of establishing Sergei's culpability. Work consumed their days and nights, blurring the lines between them. The living room, once a haven for family warmth, transformed into a bustling command center. Documents sprawled across the table, while maps adorned the walls, a tapestry of notes and arrows. Artem, his strength restored, had returned to the man Elena remembered, focused, resolute, and driven to an almost obsessive degree by his work. He grasped his pencil once more, his mind replaying the project's specifics, searching for details Sergei could exploit to mislead them. One evening, as Artem was engrossed in his artwork, Kostya abruptly lifted his gaze from his laptop, his eyes gleaming with enthusiasm, like bright beacons in the softly lit room. "Dad, check this out," he murmured, revealing the screen to Artem. "I found something really intriguing." The screen showcased a captured image of an email, dated and originating from Sergei. The recipient's name was identified as Ivan. The email alluded to minor adjustments to financial records and instructed the recipient to keep it secret from Artem. The email's timestamp lined up with several weeks prior to the fire, a fact that Artem and Elena couldn't ignore. While not conclusive proof, it certainly sparked their suspicions. Who was Ivan, and what did these changes signify? "Ivan," Artem repeated. "Sergei knew someone who worked for a construction firm. I recall his last name was Petrov, Ivan, if I'm not mistaken. He handled the financial reports for the company." Elena swiftly entered the name into the search bar. Within a few minutes, she located his profile on a social media platform. The profile featured pictures of Ivan Petrov. One showed him grinning, raising a glass of champagne, with Sergei by his side. This photograph was from the grand opening of the Heavenly Harbor. "He holds the key to solving this," Elena stated firmly. "He definitely possesses more information than we know concerning the changes and likely played a role in this." They had gained an advantage, but the next step remained unclear. A pressing question arose. How could they confront such overwhelming power without any means or influence to counter it? They were simply a family, courageously confronting an individual of immense power. "We need Ivan to be more vocal," Artem stated, leaning back in his chair. "But how are we going to encourage him? He won't share unless there's a compelling reason. He's terrified of Sergei," Kostya stated softly. "We must make him fear us more than he fears Sergei." Artem gazed at his son, awestruck by his composure and unwavering resolve. "How are we supposed to manage this?" Elena inquired anxiously, her gaze fixed on her husband and son. "We can utilize what we possess," Kostya stated. "The letter. It can act as a foundation. It demonstrates his link to Sergei. We can transmit a copy to him, concealing our identities. He must understand that we are aware of everything, that we are capable of revealing everything to him." The plan was daring, yet it represented their only hope. Determined to act, they moved forward. Kostya set up an anonymous email account and sent Ivan a message consisting of a single sentence. "We're aware of your link to Sergei. We possess proof. We're watching." Attached, he included a screenshot of a letter he had successfully retrieved. The days stretched endlessly, each one blending into the next, the second following the first, the third. Silence met them. Artem's determination wavered. Had they acted too quickly? Was Ivan simply disregarding them? Nevertheless, Kostya discovered on the fourth day that Ivan had perused his letter. "He saw it," Kostya declared, a note of victory in his voice. "Now he understands what we've always understood. Now he's consumed by fear." Over the next few days, observing Ivan revealed he resided in a lavish city center apartment, drove a high-end vehicle, and enjoyed an undeniably extravagant lifestyle. His expensive pursuits, frequent visits to casinos and upscale restaurants painted him as the ideal target. He's the weakest point, Artem stated. His vulnerability lies in his obsession with wealth, comfort, and luxury. He lacks the fortitude to endure hardship. He's unprepared for his world to crumble. Determined to escalate the situation, Kostya discovered a photograph of Ivan from a casino online. With Elena's assistance, who surprisingly possessed graphic editing skills, Kostya created a photo montage. This montage depicted Ivan alongside Sergei, accompanied by the caption, "Two crooks who robbed the city." Kostya printed the montage and anonymously emailed it to Ivan, just as he had done previously. Ivan responded swiftly, calling Sergei right away. Kostya, having previously set up a listening program on his phone, overheard their entire conversation. "Sergei, what in the world is happening?" Ivan shouted. "I've been getting threats. This means someone knows our secret. This means they know about Artem." "Take it easy, Ivan," Sergei said in a composed and resolute tone. "It's just an empty threat. I've seen that homeless guy around before. He's harmless. He lacks both the means and the opportunity to cause any harm. Just delete the letter and move on." However, Ivan couldn't dispel the haunting memory. Panic seized him. He knew Sergei posed a threat, yet he found himself in a vulnerable position, merely a tiny part of a vast, corrupt system. Artem knew he had to take action. He needed to meet with Ivan and show him firsthand that their interactions weren't just a frivolous game. "However, it's too dangerous," Elena cautioned. "What if he turns to Sergei? What if he contacts the authorities?" "He won't involve the police," Artem stated resolutely. "He's equally culpable to Sergei. He's terrified of his reputation being tarnished, of ending up imprisoned. He's afraid, and that's where our strength lies." A meeting was scheduled, and Kostya emailed Ivan an invitation. They selected a dilapidated former property of Artem's as their rendezvous point. The choice held symbolic meaning and offered a distinct advantage. They were intimately familiar with the location. Ivan arrived, his face drained of color, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He looked around nervously, as though anticipating immediate peril. Upon spotting Artem, he stood motionless. "Artem?" he breathed, his voice barely a whisper. You've passed away." "I'm alive," Artem stated calmly. "I had been concealing myself, but now I've returned, and my purpose is to reclaim all that was unjustly taken from me." Ivan attempted to flee, but Kostya, positioned at the exit, obstructed his path. "Take a seat, Ivan," Artem ordered. "There are matters we need to talk about." Ivan settled onto a worn, dusty chair, his eyes locked on Artem, Elena, and Kostya, a palpable fear etched in their depths. "I'm clueless," he started. "I was just on the job. I had no inkling that he—" Artem looked at Ivan with a serious expression. "Don't deceive us, Ivan," he said firmly. "We're aware of everything. We have proof. We're aware of the letter, and we're aware of the financial misconduct. We know all." Ivan's complexion drained further, his gaze fixed on Artem. His eyes, wide with both fear and bewilderment, struggled to comprehend how the man who appeared so broken and defeated could now stand tall, prepared for a fight. What is it you desire from me?" he murmured. "Tell us everything," Artem demanded. "Every single detail about Sergei's plans, about the fire, and about those forged documents. We need to know it all." A heavy silence descended upon Ivan. He slumped, his gaze fixed on his hands. He was caught, cornered between two menacing forces. Sergei, capable of ruthless destruction, loomed on one side, while Artem, with the power to reveal his true nature, threatened from the other. I can't," he breathed, his voice trembling. He'll ruin me," he added, fear lacing his words. "He won't harm you," Artem stated with assurance. "He's rational and won't jeopardize himself by eliminating you. Frightening you is a simpler option for him. Nevertheless, we can ensure your safety. Collaborate with us, and we'll offer you immunity and assistance in building a new life. However, if you choose to stay silent, we will release all the evidence, making it public knowledge through newspapers and television broadcasts. This will lead to your exposure, the loss of everything you have, and ultimately imprisonment. The choice is yours. Facing his final warning, Ivan, consumed by fear and despair, understood he was left with an inescapable decision. His only option was to select the less devastating of two equally dreadful possibilities. "All right," he murmured, his voice raspy and strained as though shattered. "I'll tell you everything." For several hours, Ivan recounted Sergei's intricate criminal operation, detailing how he employed front companies to illicitly transfer funds from the project. Ivan painted a vivid picture of Sergei's methods, including the use of forged documents, bribed officials, and a deliberately set arson attack intended to conceal the fraud and secure insurance payouts. He recounted how Sergei employed thugs to torch the warehouse, and how Ivan himself fabricated fire reports to hide the building's overvaluation for insurance. Artem meticulously jotted down each detail. Elena captured every word of the document Ivan had presented with her camera. Kostya remained focused on the tape recorder, diligently preserving the conversation. Upon Ivan's completion, Artem turned to him and said, "Thank you, Ivan. We no longer require your assistance. You're free to leave, but be warned. If you approach Sergei, we'll release all this information, and you'll be the first to face legal consequences. We'll be keeping a close eye on you." Ivan rose silently and departed. The humiliation weighed heavily on him. He felt defeated, yet a glimmer of hope for freedom flickered within his heart. He was willing to go to any lengths to escape imprisonment. Now, armed with irrefutable proof, they were in a position to act. They had to make a decisive move before Sergei became aware of their discovery. "This has to be made public," Elena insisted. "We can't simply involve the police. Sergei is too influential. He could easily conceal everything." "We have to hold a press conference," Artem declared. "We need to contact every journalist, every TV station. We need to inform the entire city, the entire country, the truth. We must reveal him to the global audience." Equipped with the required skills, Kostya drafted an electronic press release. He disseminated it to prominent news agencies and television channels, extending an invitation to journalists for a press conference where the most significant fraud of recent times will be exposed. On the designated day, they reached a crumbling, deserted mansion, which had transformed into their sanctuary and base of operations. Equipped with a laptop holding a presentation detailing all the evidence, they patiently awaited the opportune moment. Initially, a few journalists reached out to Artem, but as they grasped the situation, more and more joined them. As more journalists flocked to the scene, the room where Artem stood became packed. Television cameras focused on him as he remained composed and confident, his eyes gleaming with determination. "A year ago, I departed, shattered, and disgraced. I lost everything. My name, my company, my family," he stated, his voice steady and composed. "I departed to shield them from hardship. However, I was mistaken. I understood that battling alone leads to failure, and so I returned. I returned to fight by my family's side." He recounted the Heavenly Harbor project, detailing Sergei's involvement, the financial schemes, and the fire. He laid out documents, letters, reports, the whole truth, nothing concealed. He refrained from twisting facts or exaggerating. He spoke only of what he knew. Elena and Kostya stood beside him, their faces reflecting pride and affection, their unwavering gaze a testament to their support. Upon concluding his speech, an eerie silence descended upon the hall. The journalists were left speechless, as the unexpected turn of events had taken them all by surprise. Artem stated, "Ivan Petrov, Sergei's former financial director, supplied us with all the necessary evidence. He participated in Sergei's illegal actions, but out of fear, he is now willing to collaborate with the authorities." The news struck everyone completely unexpectedly, as if out of the blue. Journalists promptly bombarded Artem with numerous questions. Their triumph was fleeting. That night, as word of the press conference rippled through the media, a man in a fine suit materialized at the entrance to their deserted hideout. His eyes, however, held a chilling, distant quality. "Sergei really wants to speak with you," he told Artem. "He requests that you listen attentively to his offer, which he claims will be advantageous for you." "I'm not leaving," Artem stated firmly. I've said everything I needed to. As far as I'm concerned, Sergei deserves to be in prison." The stranger smirked disdainfully. "You think you've won? You've just thrown a pebble at a creature capable of crushing you. Sergei won't end up in jail. He has influence, wealth, and power. What do you have? Only your family and this paltry evidence. He'll wrap this up as fast as you started it." Artem remained undeterred. He saw Kostya and Elena stiffen, but his voice was steady. "He can try, but things have escalated beyond a personal matter. It's public knowledge now, known throughout the city, the entire country. Concealing it will be impossible." "You really think so?" The man retrieved a small tablet from his inner pocket and extended it towards Artem. "Take a look at this. Sergei sent it for you to see just how far he's prepared to push things." Artyom grabbed the tablet on which a grainy video from a cheap phone was playing. It showed him, gaunt, with messy hair, sitting beside a trash can, eating something. Then, he was lying on a park bench, an old newspaper draped over him. The video continued, each shot revealing his deteriorating state with increasing despair. Artem, stretching out his hands in a plea for help. Artem, struggling for scraps. This was his reality. Months of aimless wandering. Months that had transformed into a grueling challenge for his entire family. After the video concluded, Artem fixed his gaze on the man. His eyes held no fear or shame, only a raging inferno of anger. "He intends to make this information public," the stranger stated. "He desires everyone to be aware of the truth concerning you. He's not a business person who's simply fallen short, but a man who has recently emerged from a life on the streets. His goal is to damage your reputation, to sow seeds of doubt about everything you say. He knows people believe what they see, and they will see this. As a result, their trust in your evidence will vanish." As Elena came closer and saw the video, she squeezed Artem's hand, overwhelmed by memories of the past days and months, a period that had felt like a horrifying nightmare. Kostya, watching the video alongside her, tightened his fists, his heart consumed by hatred for the man who was exploiting their family's pain for his own gain. "I understand it's true," Artem stated softly. "However, there's no disgrace in that. I was let down by someone I trusted, and, as a result, I found myself on the streets, losing everything. Yet, I returned because I possess a family who stands by me. I returned to vindicate my name, my enterprise, my honor. And I will not depart, I will not surrender. Experiencing homelessness isn't something to be ashamed of. What's truly shameful is deceit and exploiting others' suffering for personal gain. It doesn't matter what it was," he stated, his voice laced with a palpable threat. "Sergei will make it matter. This is just the beginning. He's aware of your wife and son. He knows where they reside, where your child attends school. He knows you have something to fear losing." A sudden wave of icy fear washed over Artem, as if the blood in his body had turned to ice. He looked at Elena and Kostya, noticing their pale complexions. He knew with absolute certainty that his struggle had only just begun. Artem declared, "Inform Sergei that our conversations are over. We'll see this matter through to its conclusion. Let him pursue his course of action. However, I will remain steadfast on my chosen path." The stranger smiled, saying, "The choice is ultimately yours. However, remember this. You have something at stake, while Sergei has nothing to lose." He then turned and departed. The following days proved to be a true trial for the family. Sergei didn't simply watch from the sidelines. The television stations that had aired Artem's press conference the day before swiftly reversed their stance. Experts emerged on screen, questioning the validity of the documents presented by Ivan Petrov. They asserted that Ivan Petrov was merely a figurehead, and that all the evidence presented was contrived. A documentary broadcast on a federal channel portrayed Artem as a liar, swindler, and homeless individual. The film employed selectively edited footage to construct a detrimental portrayal of Artem, suggesting his homelessness indicated mental instability and a predisposition towards criminal behavior. The film declared he was a homeless individual who survived on the streets, engaging in theft and violence. He's not authentic to his stated identity. He is a deceptive con man, and his narrative is merely a ploy for blackmail. Artyom's reputation suffered irreparable harm as a result of the campaign. Those who once lauded his bravery now viewed him with distrust. Social media was inundated with derisive comments, labeling him nothing more than another con artist. "Dad, what's going on?" Kostya inquired, observing another news report. "They've completely disrupted everything." "This is an information war," Artyom declared, his fists tightening. "They aim to sow confusion, to make us doubt ourselves and believe we're mistaken. Their objective is to wear us down and force us to surrender." Elena was overcome with sadness. Artyom's pain was evident, and his past, which he had desperately sought to forget, was now laid bare for all to see. "We must answer," she stated. "Silence is not an option for us." "How can that even be happening?" Artyom exclaimed, stunned. "They control all the media outlets. They can fabricate whatever they choose about us and spread it to everyone. Then we'll leverage what they can't manage," Kostya declared. "The internet. We'll utilize social media, blogs, forums. Our version of events will be shared there. We'll make our story known." The idea proved sound. Kostya, a specialist in this area, established multiple accounts across different platforms. From these, they commenced posting, sharing their narrative, and presenting all the evidence at their disposal: letters, financial records, photographs, and audio recordings of dialogues with Ivan. However, Sergei was determined not to yield. He understood that direct threats and information warfare were ineffective against them. He resolved to take a more assertive approach. Upon returning home from work one day, Kostya was accosted by two unidentified men. Both were clad in tracksuits, their faces obscured by hoods. Without uttering a sound, they seized him and forcibly led him into a dilapidated minibus. Another man, clad in the identical attire, sat inside. He remained silent, not uttering a word. Their journey continued, enveloped in a heavy silence. Kostya felt fear, but he masked it well, knowing that displaying his anxieties would only benefit them. Moments later, the minibus decelerated. The door flew open, and Kostya was forcibly removed. They had arrived at a deserted construction site, with skeletal buildings reaching for the sky in the background, and heaps of construction rubble scattered around. "Who do you think we are?" one of them snarled, his voice gravelly and disrespectful. "No," Kostya replied, "I'm not aware." "We belong to Sergei," he stated. "We're here to request that you inform your father to stay out of matters that don't concern him. Otherwise—" His sentence trailed off, replaced by a clenched fist slamming forcefully against the wall beside him. The wall suffered a fissure, causing several bricks to crumble and descend to the ground. "I understand," Kostya stated resolutely. "I'll convey the message." He was left a short distance from his home. Upon arrival, he was coated in dust and bore several bruises on his face. Artyom and Elena exclaimed in worry when they beheld him. "What occurred, darling?" Elena inquired, her voice trembling with eagerness. "Sergei," Kostya started. "He simply dispatched his men, and they intimidated me." Consumed by rage, Artyom was determined to seek revenge on Sergei, willing to go to any lengths. However, he knew he couldn't allow his emotions to control him. He had to remain composed, acting with clear-headed logic and deliberation. "I knew he'd react this way," Artyom stated. "He can't handle losing. He'll spare no effort to destroy us." "What are we going to do?" Elena exclaimed, her voice filled with despair. "We're no match for the gangsters. We can't defend ourselves. We have no other option but to surrender. Let's just forget about it and leave. I won't allow anything terrible to befall my child." Artyom stepped towards her, enveloped her in a hug, and declared with unwavering conviction, "We won't back down. We can't surrender. If we do, he'll feel no consequence, and will likely do this to others. We have to see this through to its completion." "But how could that even be possible?" Kostya questioned. "He's threatening us. He's capable of anything." Artyom's gaze was fixed on his son, his eyes blazing with intensity. "We have to be bold," he declared. "We need to compel him out of hiding. We must make him take an action that will directly impact his own life." The following day, Artyom and Kostya visited the police station. They compiled a statement detailing the threats and assault against Kostya, presenting all available evidence, including documents and recordings. Initially skeptical, the police came to understand that this was not a run-of-the-mill, domestic disagreement, but a grave offense. "Without a warrant, our hands are tied," remarked one officer. "We require concrete proof. We require a witness from his inner circle to come forward." Artem understood that inaction was no longer an option. He had to make a decisive move. He required someone with first-hand knowledge of Sergei's schemes, and he knew exactly who that person was. Ivan, motivated to locate him, Kostya employed his abilities to determine his residence. They then proceeded to his dwelling. Upon reaching the apartment, they discovered the door was locked and broken. Inside, they were met with utter destruction. Furniture was strewn across the room, and shelves lay overturned. "Sergei," Elena breathed softly. He reached him. Their investigation uncovered a small, dusty notebook lying on the floor, discovered by Kostya. It was crammed with handwritten notes, revealing to be Ivan's personal diary entries. He documented everything," Kostya murmured, scanning through a handful of pages. All of Sergei's transactions. Every official Sergei corrupted, he listed by name. He recorded it all. "This is our opportunity," Artem exclaimed. "This is exactly what we required. This is undeniable proof. We must go to the police right away." Hurriedly, they arrived at the police station, the notebook in hand. Upon reading it, the officers were astonished. It held not just names and sums, but also dates, addresses, and a meticulous account of Sergei's every action. It provided a thorough and complete record of his dealings. "This is incredibly serious," stated one of the police officers. "We have to apprehend him right away." A warrant for Sergei's arrest was secured, prompting the formation of a dedicated apprehension team. At the police station, Artem, Elena, and Kostya, anticipation thrumming in their veins, waited eagerly, their eyes gleaming with the assurance of an imminent triumph. Several hours passed, and then the news arrived. Sergei had been taken into custody. A wave of relief, as though a heavy burden had been lifted, washed over Artem. He gazed at Elena and Kostya, tears sparkling in their eyes. These were not tears of sorrow, but tears of pure joy. They had triumphed. Upon Sergei's arrival at the police station, Artem demanded to speak with him. Initially, the officers declined, but recognizing his unwavering determination, they eventually granted him access to Sergei. Sergei sat in the interrogation room, composure radiating from him. His confidence remained steadfast. He simply couldn't fathom why he had been arrested. "Are you here to mock me?" His voice crackled with frigid fury. "Do you believe you've triumphed? Do you think I'll be confined to a prison cell? You're sorely wrong. I'll escape from here as swiftly as I entered." "You're mistaken," Artem stated. "Escape is impossible. We have proof. We possess recordings and Ivan's notebook, which meticulously documents everything you did." For a moment, Sergei's face blanched and he hesitated. A single, undeniable thought pierced his mind. He was defeated. He now understood that Artem was more cunning than he'd initially believed. You believe that's the extent of it?" he stammered, his voice lacking its former confidence. "You think I've been idle? I've been collecting evidence as well. I carried out my own inquiry. I am also capable of bringing you to account." "What do you intend to say?" Artem inquired. Sergei retrieved a slim envelope from his inner pocket, placed it on the table, and remarked, "Have a look at this. It holds your history, your current reality, and what lies ahead." Artem opened the envelope and discovered a handwritten letter within. "Artem, I know you're searching for me. You intend to hold me accountable, but your efforts will be in vain. I possess evidence capable of ruining you. Your family is your vulnerability. To ensure their safety, you must cease all actions, dismiss your knowledge, and depart. Otherwise," a photograph was attached to the letter's conclusion. It depicted Elena and Kostya, captured just moments before, seated in a car, patiently awaiting Artem's arrival. You were tracking them?" Artem exclaimed, his voice laced with fury. Sergei confessed, I've been watching them all along. I knew they were your vulnerability, that you'd always protect them." Artem stood transfixed, his heart pounding. The letter in his hand felt unbearably heavy, and the photograph of Elena and Kostya, snapped just moments before, seared his palm. Sergei, seated across from him, grinned with smug satisfaction, his eyes gleaming with a certainty that Artem knew meant he had already won this battle. "How could you even do such a thing?" Artem bellowed, his voice raw with fury. They're my family. They had no business being caught up in this mess. That's why they're involved, Sergei stated calmly. You introduced them, Artem. You brought me into the open, but you failed to understand that I, too, possess the capacity to illuminate. My light, however, is a fire capable of destroying everything precious to you. Artem gazed at the picture. Peace radiated from Elena and Kostya's faces as they waited, oblivious to the peril that threatened their lives. In that instant, he understood that his thirst for victory couldn't become their tragedy. He had to intervene, but how could he? His eyes landed on Sergei, revealing not a hint of fear, only unwavering confidence in their impending triumph. This was his error. He believed Artem would be terrified and crumble. However, he was mistaken. All right, Artem conceded. You win, I give up. A triumphant smile lit up Sergei's face. Excellent, he declared. I was certain you were a discerning individual, that you would choose wisely to remain with your family. There's one stipulation, Artem pressed on, his voice laced with a frigid, unwavering intensity. You must confess publicly. You need to explain how you betrayed me, reveal what you did to Ivan, and make it all public. Only then will forgiveness be possible. Sergei responded with a laugh. Do you truly believe I'm insane? I'll never comply. I won't remain silent. I won't be silenced, Artem stated resolutely, his voice as hard and unyielding as steel. I refuse to heed your words. I will not grant you forgiveness, and my pursuit of justice will not cease. I will fight openly, disclosing everything to all who will listen, and utilize your threats as proof. I will make it known to the entire city, to the entire nation, that you threatened my family. I'll call you a coward, claim you're terrified of me, and say you're afraid of the truth. Sergei's smile vanished as he grasped the sincerity in Artem's words. He understood that Artem was not jesting, and a wave of realization washed over him. He hadn't frightened him after all. You wouldn't even consider it, he breathed, his voice laced with menace. I'm capable of anything to your loved ones. Go ahead, Artem challenged, his eyes blazing. But remember this, I'm no longer in hiding. I've returned, and I'll fight until my last breath. For my family, for my reputation, for my dignity. Abruptly, the door swung open, and the investigator strode into the room. His eyes landed first on Artem, before settling on Sergei. Have you finished up? He inquired. We have numerous questions for Sergei, and the arrest warrant has already been authorized by the prosecutor. With his deceptions unveiled and his capture confirmed, Sergei hung his head in shame. His spirit was crushed, leaving him utterly defeated. Several months down the line, Sergei received a prison sentence for his crimes of fraud, forgery, and threats. It was discovered that Ivan Petrov had not been killed, but merely concealed, and he subsequently testified against Sergei, earning a suspended sentence for his cooperation with the investigation. Relieved from their paralyzing fear, Artem, Elena, and Kostya made their way back to their home. Artem, leveraging his expertise and network, dedicated himself to restoring his business. The Heavenly Harbor project was officially terminated, and all embezzled funds were recovered. One evening, while they were having dinner in the living room, Kostya, who was already absorbed in his latest project, stole a glance at his father. Dad, he stated, you could have simply stepped aside. Why didn't you? Elena, seated beside him, gently squeezed his hand, prompting a smile from Artem. He gazed at her. Listen, son, he explained, life isn't solely about achieving success, wealth, or power. At its core, life is a continuous battle, a fight for truth, for justice, for those you hold dear. And when you champion what truly matters to you, you can't permit defeat. Elena embraced him, her thoughts instantly transported to the harrowing months when Artem had been living on the streets. She recalled the tireless searches she and Kostya had conducted, and now, gazing at him, she understood their efforts had not been for nothing. They hadn't merely returned him to their home, they had restored him to their lives, to a life brimming with purpose and joy.